Today we are going to talk about features of academic writing. Academic writing in English is linear, which means it has one central point or theme, with every part contributing to the main line of argument without digressions or repetitions. Its objective is to inform rather than entertain, as well as this is in the standard written form of the language. There are 10 main features of academic writing that are often discussed. Academic writing is to some extent complex, formal, objective, explicit, hedged, and responsible. It uses language precisely and accurately. It's also well organized and planned. Written language is relatively more complex than spoken language. Written language has longer words, it's lexically more dense, and it has a more varied vocabulary. Written texts are also lexically dense compared to spoken language. They have proportionally more lexical words than grammatical words. Written texts are shorter and have longer, more complex words and phrases. They have more noun-based phrases, more nominalizations, and more lexical variations. Written language is grammatically more complex than spoken language. It has more subordinate clauses, more that to complement clauses, more long sequences or prepositional phrases, more attributive adjectives, and more passives than spoken language. The following features are common in academic written texts: noun-based phrases, subordinate clauses, embeddings, complement clauses, sequences of prepositional phrases, participles, passive verbs, lexical density, lexical complexity, nominalization, attributive adjectives, adjectival groups as complements. As example, Holiday compares a sentence from a spoken text. You can control the train this way, and if you do that, you can be quite sure that they'll be able to run more safely and more quickly than they would otherwise, no matter how bad the weather gets. With a typical written variant, the use of this method of control unquestionably leads to safer and faster train running in the most adverse weather conditions. The main difference is the grammar, not the vocabulary. Other equivalents are given in this slide. You can see them. Academic writing is relatively formal. In general, this means that in an essay you should avoid colloquial words and expressions. In general, this means in an essay that you should avoid colloquial words and expressions, stuff, a lot of, thing, sort of, abbreviated forms, can't, doesn't, shouldn't, two-word verbs, put off, bring up, subheadings, numbering, and bullet points in formal essays, but use them in reports. Asking questions. In academic writing, facts and figures are given precisely. In academic writing, you need to be precise when you use information, dates, or figures. Don't use a lot of people when you can say 50 million people. For example, chemists had attempted to synthesize quinine for the previous 100 years, but all they had achieved was to discover the extreme complexity of the problem. Or, the volatile oily liquid beta-chlorobeta-ethyl sulfide has first synthesized in 1854, and in 1887 it was reported to produce blisters if it touched the skin. It was called mustard gas and was used at Ypres in 1917 when it caused many thousands of casualties. Written language is in general objective rather than personal. It therefore has fewer words than refer to the writer or to the reader. This means that the main emphasis should be on the information that you want to give and the arguments you want to make, rather than you. For that reason, academic writing tends to use nouns and adjectives rather than verbs and adverbs. This means that the main emphasis should be on the information that you want to give and the arguments you want to make, rather than you. This is related to the basic nature of academic study and academic writing in particular. Nobody really wants to know what you think or believe. They want to know what you have studied and learned and how this has led you to your various conclusions. The thoughts and beliefs should be based on your lectures, readings, discussions, and research, and it's important to make this clear. In general, avoid words like I, me, myself. A reader will normally assume that any idea not referenced is your own. It's therefore unnecessary to make this explicit. Don't write, in my opinion, this a very interesting study. Write, this is a very interesting study. Avoid you to refer to the reader or people in general. Don't write, you can easily forget how different life was 50 years ago. Right? It's easy to forget how difficult life was 50 years ago. Some examples are given on this slide. The data indicates that this is where the disagreement and controversial begins, and many others. Academic writing is explicit about the relationship in the text. Furthermore, it is the responsibility of the writer in English to make it clear to the reader how the various parts of the text are related. These connections can be made explicit by the use of different Snelling's words. Academic writing is explicit in several ways. It is explicit in its signposting or the organization of the ideas in the text. As a writer of academic English, it's your responsibility to make it clear to your reader how various parts of the text are related. These connections can be made explicit by the use of different Snelling words. For example, if you want to tell your reader that your line of argument is going to change, make it clear. If you think that one sentence gives reasons for something in another sentence, make it explicit. If you think two ideas are almost the same, say so. If you intend your sentence to give extra information, make it clear. If you giving examples, do it explicitly. It is explicit in its acknowledgement of the sources of the ideas in the text. If you know the source of the ideas you're presenting, acknowledge it. Do this in academic writing. McGrail has shown that thirds Dubliners find English more acceptable than the Northern Irish. Dubliners still seek a solution to the Northern problem within an all-Ireland state. Note: although Dubliners find the English more acceptable than the Northern Irish, Dubliners still seek a solution to the Northern problem within an all-Ireland state. Academic writing uses vocabulary accurately. Most subjects have words with narrow specific meaning. Linguistics distinguishes clearly between phonetics and phonemics. General English doesn't. In academic writing, you need to be accurate in your use of vocabulary. Do not confuse, for example, phonetics and phonology or grammar with syntax. Choose the correct word, for example, meeting, assembly, gathering, or conference, or from money, cash, currency, capital, or funds. You also need to be accurate in your use of grammar. In any kind of academic writing you do, it's necessary to make decisions about your stance on a particular subject. or the strength of the claims you are making. Different subjects prefer to do this in different ways. A technique common in certain kinds of academic writing is known by linguists age. It's often believed that academic writing, particularly scientific writing, is factual, simply to convey facts and information. However, it's not recognized that an important feature of academic writing is the concept of quotient language, often called heading or vague language. In other words, it's necessary to make decision about your stance on a particular subject or the strength of the claims you're making. Different subjects refer to do this in different ways. Here are some examples of language used in headings. Here I present introductory verbs, certain lexical verbs, certain modal verbs, adverbs of frequency, modal adverbs, modal adjectives, modal nouns, that clauses, to clauses plus adjective. In academic writing, you must be responsible for and must be able to provide evidence and justification for any claims you make. You are also responsible for demonstrating an understanding of any source text you use. This is done by paraphrasing and summarizing that you read and acknowledging the source of this information or ideas by a system of citation. Academic writing is well organized. It flows easily from one section to the next in a logical fashion. A good place to start is the genre of your text. Once you have decided on the genre, the structure is easily determined. Students are asked to write many different kinds of texts. Depending on your subject, these could be essays, laboratory reports, case studies, book reviews, reflective diaries, posters, research proposals, and so on, are normally referred to as genre families or genres. Genres are defined by their purpose, their audience, and their structure. Looking at typical structures can help you with your organization. The following genres are common in higher education: essays, reports, case studies, research proposals, book reviews, brief research reports, literature reviews, reflective writing, introductions, research methods, research results, research discussions, writing conclusions, research abstracts, research dissertation, and thesis. Academic writing is well planned. It usually takes place after research and evaluation, according to a specific purpose and plan. The following procedure is typical when writing an extended essay or assignment. Read the questions or brief and understood that if you're required to do. Think about the subject, the purpose, and the audience. Think about what you know about the subject. Write it down in some way. Go to the library or internet and find relevant books, articles, or websites. Find the books on your reading list, if you have one, and study them. Make notes on these books and articles. Record full details of the materials you use. Organize your piece of work. Type or write your first draft. Discuss your first draft informally with friends, other members of your own class, and your lecturer if possible. Revise your first draft, bearing in mind any comments that were made in your discussions. Produce your second draft. Proofread your draft. Produce a final typed version. Check everything.